Hello, everybody. This is Kevin Bass at thedietwars.com, and I am going to talk to you guys today about what I eat. People keep asking me, what do you eat, Kevin? What is the ideal diet? Those are two separate questions, but people believe, because I am an expert about nutrition and diet, that therefore what I eat is what is ideal. This may have some merit. However, this frame presupposes that there is only one kind of ideal goal for eating, when in fact there are many goals for eating. Let's take an example. The ideal diet for maximum weight loss is quite different from the ideal diet for maximum muscle gain, which is quite different from the optimal diet for the best weight loss while maintaining as much muscle as possible, which is in turn very different from a diet oriented towards the maximum lifespan, which is all very different from a diet oriented towards maximum sports performance within the next month or two, which is different from the ideal diet for optimal performance within the next year or two, which is very different from the optimal diet for environmental health and climate change, for animal rights, for respect of a natural and traditional order of the world and of life. Whatever that means. But the point that I think everybody already intuitively understands is that the diet that you will choose as one's ideal or optimal depends upon what one is trying to achieve with that diet. And people are all trying to achieve different things. Let me see for a moment, by reflecting, what it is I'm trying to achieve with my diet, and let me articulate that to you. Once I do that, perhaps, then we can talk about alternative goals and what you would do in your situation if you do not share my goals, which undoubtedly many of you do not. And since I'm not here to preach to you about what your goals should be and tell you that yours should be the same as mine, I'm going to tell you as much of the story as I can within the somewhat limited time in which I can make a video that people will actually watch. So my goals are several. I have several different goals that I'm trying to achieve at the same time. I've never articulated this explicitly, either out loud or even to myself. So as I'm speaking right now, this is going to be the first time. One goal of mine is to live in a way that is consistent with vigor and a sense of well-being. To do that, I like to eat as much as I can while getting away with it. And remaining at a good body composition. Which brings me to my second goal, to have good body composition. These two goals are actually not entirely mutually exclusive. In fact, to eat in such a way that makes me feel vigorous is going to bring me muscle. It's going to generate a lot of muscle because I'm going to be eating a lot. I'm going to be eating very wholesomely. In broad terms, we'll get into specifics in a moment. But in broad terms, I'm going to be eating very wholesomely and healthfully. And therefore, those two goals are somewhat in sync with each other. However, they're not entirely in sync with each other. Because in the short term, if I eat a lot, I feel good. Everybody knows, especially if you've ever cut down to a significant extent, cut down your weight. If you have a nice big meal, there's no better feeling in the next half of the day than the one that you're gonna feel. You're gonna feel great. Unless it's too big. But if it's reasonably sized, you're gonna feel great. But if you do that too many times, you first of all will lose that feeling of this feels great after a big meal because your brain will become desensitized to it. And second, you will become so big and fat that you will no longer feel good, because fat in and of itself is inflammatory, and being in an inflammatory condition will send inflammatory signals to your brain that makes you not feel as good. It induces a chronic state that's similar to being ill from an infection, being in a chronic inflammatory state due to being too fat. Therefore, I also want to maintain my calories within a reasonable amount. So I'm trying to eat a lot, but I'm also trying to eat calories within a reasonable amount so as to stay lean. But in order to eat a lot and stay lean, I have to exercise and lift weights. Which is why perhaps I lift weights, or at least one of the reasons. Because in addition to feeling vigorous, it's nice to look the part not simply to be consistent, but to enjoy life and to project that vigor to the world. For me, I enjoy that. I enjoy lifting weights and projecting my size outwardly because it has social benefits. Men respect you more, and women like you more. And you feel more confident. It's not to say that you can't be skinny or fat or any shape whatsoever and not command respect or get women. You can do both of those things at any shape. But being physically fit also helps you to do those things. There are other benefits. Being able to defend myself is also a big goal of mine. Legit defend myself and feel confident in any sort of situation where somebody might be physically threatening me, because it's happened a few times in my life. And the lights went off at just this moment. And, well, there are certain benefits related to one's romantic and private life of being in good shape for both women and for men. And that is another reason I stay in shape. So these are my goals, and then I have one more. I'm also interested in being a responsible human being and doing good for the world and for animals and that kind of stuff. So I don't eat so many animals. What I'm going to tell you now about how I eat can be used in any diet, including a diet where you might eat more animals, or including a diet where you might want to get bigger or leaner than me, or where you may not care as much about sports performance and you want to get way leaner than me. Because as part of being able to defend myself, I also train in martial arts, and being able to perform well and not feeling like I'm dying is something I also try for. I don't stay in crazy calorie deficits. I can't afford that most of the time. Okay, so how do I eat? So I have a housekeeper who makes all my meals. She makes all of them, and she puts them in a bin. In a stand-up, open up like a freezer where you open the lid. Standalone freezer by itself where you open the lid and the lid is parallel to the ground. I guess a stand-up freezer. She makes them in bulk, and there's 3 things in every day's container. There's 7 containers for every day of the week, and there's 3 things in each container. There is a container containing lentils, I think 100 grams. I need to double check with her, but I believe it's 100 grams of cooked lentils and maybe 200. a can of sardines that have been drained of the oil. They're in olive oil. Been drained of the oil. And I believe 100 grams of stir-fry vegetables. I used to use greens, but I don't like mixing greens with my lentils and my sardines. And some days I'll add lentil pasta, or rather she will add lentil pasta if I ask her to do so. There are 2 of those containers in each of the day's big containers. So I'll eat 2 of those per day. And in addition, there is I want to say half a kilogram, or maybe 500 grams, I believe 500 grams of berries in a separate third container. Those I take to work and I microwave them and eat them every day. I don't eat salmon, I eat sardines. The reason is expense. It's cheaper to eat sardines. And there's less risk, in my experience, of toxicity. Because when I get bad fish, sometimes I notice, or at least I believe I do, it ruins my sleep. And I start waking up in the middle of the night. So as you can tell, based on what I've said so far, and I don't eat any other additional meat, I'm a pescatarian. I only eat fish. Although there's some caveats to that. In addition to these 3 small containers within the larger 1-day container, right? They're all part of the 1 day. Each day has 3 containers. In addition to these 3 containers, there's another container of 100 grams of mixed nuts from Kirkland. It's also from Costco, just like everything else I'm talking about. And in the morning, I also have a big bowl of oatmeal with berries, erythritol and monk fruit, 1-to-1 ratio as a sweetener. And if I've been exceptionally busy, I'll have then another small bowl of oatmeal before I go to bed, a small one. Okay. If I had more money, I would drink like several of the Premier protein shakes per day. Right now, I don't have that money. So I just eat what I've mentioned just now. If I'm running low on calories, sometimes I'll eat something extra. Like if there's a donut around after I've had one of my meals, I'll eat a donut. I should probably get around to adding a little bit more calories in each day's supply. And that's probably what I'm going to do to make sure that I have enough calories. Now, I haven't gone to the gym very much in the past month or 2. And that's because I've been making videos for you guys. So those calorie needs are pretty close to what I end up actually needing. Maybe a little bit more, and so sometimes I have a little bit more oatmeal. But those are pretty close. Whenever I start to go to the gym again, I'll have to add a lot more, and that's something I'm actually thinking about now, adding more. Okay, why do I eat this way? So lentils are very good. They're associated with longevity, reduced all-cause mortality in epidemiological studies. They're a source of slow carbohydrate. Things you might have heard about them are that they contain lectins. When you cook them, there's no lectins. They're high in protein as far as plant foods are concerned. And they're high in fiber, which promotes gut and whole body health via the production of short-chain fatty acids, which bind to your gastrointestinal tract and to immune cells behind the gastrointestinal tract to modulate gut immunity and turn on an anti-inflammatory response. And this is because it's disputed. This is my area in which I'm doing my PhD. My belief, this is because this tells the body that's what is inside the gut at that moment is benign. You do not have an infection. You have bacteria who are fermenting normally. They're not misbehaving. They're eating the right food. They're not eating you. Therefore, stand down. Stand down, gut immune cells. Stand down and be calm and don't be inflamed. Don't respond. Don't open up gaps so that you can begin to fight. Because that's what the body will do whenever you have inflammation in the gut. Little gaps will be opened in the gut so that the immune cells can sample more behind it and the immune cells can start to get ready to fight whatever's there, because it's not supposed to be there if it's not producing these short-chain fatty acids. Okay? So that's why fiber is good, because your body in a natural state will be getting a lot of fiber. We know that from Burke and Trowell's work. We know that from extensive documentation from anthropologists like Herman Poncer contemporarily. Herman Poncer is a friend of mine who does outstanding work and has the utmost integrity. And we know that from centuries of ethnographic studies on hunter-gatherers, that high fiber diets are the norm in hunter-gatherer groups. And therefore, if you're not getting fiber fermentation, something's wrong in your gut. Now, there are caveats to this, which is that beta-hydroxybutyrate in a fasted state, if the body's fasted and knows it's fasted, it can supplant or replace the short-chain fatty acids in the gut, probably. Meaning your body can know that it is in a ketogenic state, it is in a state where it's not eating fiber because it's not eating enough. And it's not because the fiber is simply shut off because of an infection, but because you're just not eating enough, or because you're eating low carbohydrate diet, low fiber diet. And those ketones can replace the short-chain fatty acids and turn off the inflammatory function of the gut. So you can get it in two different ways, probably, according to current knowledge and recent studies as well, like very recent, like the last few months. So, like they've confirmed some of this stuff, and it's becoming clearer that this actually probably or could potentially be the case. So, yeah, that's why beans are great. It's one of the reasons. I also like vegetables in there. The stir-fry vegetables give me a variety. There's snap peas, there's broccoli florets, and then there's carrots. So you've got the tubers, yellow and green. You've got the snap peas, this is green, and you've got the cruciferous vegetables, this broccoli, also green. A little bit of variety there. Oh, and I believe there's also red peppers. You've got some red. I'm eating the rainbow. I'm eating a large variety of plant foods, which give a variety of nutrients. And if plants have any toxicity, by diversifying, you can reap the benefit without the toxicity. That's assuming that they do. And of course, generally they don't, and it usually takes a lot of plants to get there of one specific type. But it's good to diversify. One example of not diversifying is that Paul Saladino, carnivore diet guy who says plants are toxic. He used to be a raw vegan, and he ate massive amounts of plants, sometimes the same plant over and over again. Abnormal amounts. Because he's a raw vegan, you can't extract calories from plants as easily if you're raw. So you have to eat a lot more. And now he says plants are toxic. It's no wonder. And the sardines, people say that fish oil is good for the heart. It's probably not. It probably doesn't matter at all. There are a series of randomized controlled trials on this question in people with cardiovascular disease and elevated triglycerides, but controlled risk factors in every other respect. They reduce the triglycerides by giving people DHA. There's no effect. The only time you had an effect is if the trial was not run properly, but whenever the trial was designed properly with the proper placebo control, not mineral oil, but the proper placebo control, then you saw no impact on cardiovascular disease risk. Now, there's a question of whether DHA and EPA, which are the two principal omega-3 fatty acids in fatty fish that are considered healthful. There's a question whether these two fatty acids might help with brain function. That's still an issue I need to look into and is going to be talked about shortly on this podcast. So stay tuned for that episode. But fish is also very well associated and tightly associated, although not in all cases, but in most cases, especially in European populations, with lower risk of mortality, of death. Why it's not associated as much in Asian populations is anybody's guess. It may be because it's more ubiquitous over there. It may be since everybody has it. The differences aren't that big important. Once everybody gets some, it's possible. I'm not exactly sure why. But at least in European populations, it happens to be the case that fish eating people do a little bit better. In the Adventists' health study, and saying this got me kicked out of the vegan and plant-based community, got me excommunicated from that church, which is why like, I don't care anymore I'll say what I think. In the Adventist health study, fish eaters did better in terms of their mortality than vegans and vegetarians. Fish eaters did better. Now, the vegans will say, well, it wasn't statistically significant, and that's true. It's not statistically significant to a 95% confidence interval. To a 90% confidence interval, it would be. But that's a very dichotomous way of looking at it, and I don't think that's the correct way of looking at these studies. Especially not nutrition studies, and maybe only not nutrition studies. Because you have to decide to eat, you need to go where the signal is. In a drug study, it's different. In a drug study, intervening is always risky. Generally, intervening with a drug is much more risky than not intervening, especially if you don't know as much. So if the benefit isn't proven, you need to be very careful. But with nutrition, you have to eat. You can't choose not to eat. With a drug, you can choose not to take the drug. You can't choose not to eat. You have to choose one or the other. Should always go where the evidence tends to point, and you don't necessarily need scientific certainty. And that's what separates nutrition science from pharmaceutical science. There's a different threshold for certainty when it comes to deciding what to eat, and because you have to eat, you have to go with what direction the evidence leans. You cannot do that in drug studies. You must be certain in drug studies because of the risks involved. Of course, there are risks with choosing one way of eating or the other. But those risks are equally distributed theoretically between the two different ways. By default, if you don't know which one's better, it's a 50-50 toss-up. Whereas with a drug, it's overwhelmingly likely any given drug is not going to be effective or going to cause harm. That's something we know historically. We know that. That is for sure. But with eating, it's a 50-50 chance between the two choices of things that you might eat. Or the three choices, it's equally separated. And so you must go for the thing that the evidence leans in that direction. You must go in that direction. And recommendations have to be based on that, which means they can sometimes be wrong. Therefore, when you look at the Adventist Health Study, when you look at studies in general, and you see fish tends to have a signal that's better than whole plant foods, meaning it has a signal in the direction of being better even than many whole plant foods for longevity in terms of mortality, cardiovascular disease risk, etc. You have to choose fish for health, which the vegans don't like me saying this, but I don't know what the argument against it is. Now, we are going to look at some of these replacement studies, substitution studies, the cutting edge of nutritional epidemiology in the coming episodes, and we're gonna do it in great detail. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be never like anything seen in any other podcast, but for our purposes, we'll simply state that fish tends to be healthy and I believe is a healthy addition even to a vegetarian or vegan diet because it shores up deficiencies in the diet and for some reasons perhaps we don't even understand. And it may not be related to DHA and EPA, or DHA and EPA might have special effects, positive effects on the brain, but not for the heart. We'll talk about this in a future episode. But fish is not a bad idea, so I have it in my diet to give me that insurance. I don't do well on a vegan diet. I've never done well on a vegan diet, and so I like the pescatarian diet. I like it. So, okay. The berries, they have phytochemicals. These phytochemicals are good for the brain. At least acutely, they improve cognitive function. Similar to cocoflavanols, which I will be discussing shortly in another video soon to come. cocoflavanols and dark berry polyphenols. I think they're called anthocyanins. Both improve globally brain and cognitive function, and probably contribute to long-term brain and cognitive health and a slower rate of cognitive decline. Okay. What else? Of course, the berries also improve LDL cholesterol, blood pressure, all sorts of biomarkers, inflammatory biomarkers, and that's the same as legumes. They are a very healthy food. They are one of the most healthy foods. And longevity is closely related to eating them. I also eat, as I've mentioned, the nuts, 100 grams of nuts per day. That is because nuts, as far as all the studies are concerned, and we have mechanistic basis for this, but nuts are probably the most healthy calorie-containing food that you can eat. Nuts and seeds. So I eat these mixed nuts, as I've mentioned, unsalted. The salt that I do add to my food is 25% potassium and 75% sodium, and you can find that in my video about a health hack. Do this to make your food taste good and live longer. You can find it in that video. So, what else? Yeah, I do not eat any added fats. I don't eat oils, I don't eat butter. If I did eat oils, I would eat oils, not butter. Butter is one of the worst things you can eat. I would eat olive oil potentially, or canola. I would not eat coconut. It's not a good idea. But I don't eat any of them. I have some nuts, not too many. Let's go over some principles. So protein and protein drinks, okay? Protein in and of itself, and I'm gonna do a video about this soon. Maybe I wanted to do it now, maybe I'll do it tonight. Protein in and of itself, you guys gotta listen to this. It doesn't matter for weight loss. The effects are very small and marginal. Yeah, I'm gonna make my next video about this, so catch that in a moment. The effects are small and marginal for body weight loss and satiety. However, protein-containing foods like lean meats tend to be high in satiety. How does that work? It's not the protein, it's the food. I repeat, it's not the protein, it is the food that is responsible for the satiety effects. If you drink protein drinks, you're not going to get a whole bunch of extra satiety. These Premier protein drinks, I want to drink them by the gallon. And it doesn't help me to not eat any less food. And this is supported by the randomized controlled trial evidence. But protein drinks and protein in general, apart from being in the food, they promote good body composition. They promote healthy body composition, more muscle, less fat. And there may not be a threshold effect for the less fat part. Jose Antonio's studies have shown this, and it's important to remember. So, protein is good for body composition. It may have no threshold, and you may need quite a lot to maximize body composition gains, more than is traditionally stated, such as by Stuart Phillips, who's conservative in both directions. And we'll talk about the other direction in a moment. But he's conservative in the upper end direction. More protein than the 1.6 grams per kilogram may be necessary to maximize hypertrophy, especially in people who are highly trained. On the other hand, protein in animal models promotes aging. Some people will say to you, oh, it is an animal model, we can ignore it. But this is multiple animal models, not just one. Many different genetic backgrounds, not just one. And it's always the same story. Now, you also see the same signal in humans in the observational literature. We will never have a human study restricting protein for 20 years to see if there's a longevity effect. We will never, ever have it. Therefore, we have to make a decision. Do we believe these study findings? Do they make us lean in the direction that protein restriction may have an effect, a positive effect, on long-term survival, longevity, lifespan? And the answer, in my opinion, is yes. We have to accept that fact because that's where the evidence points. We are not fundamentally different from the multiple different species in which this has been shown consistently. Our biology works the same. It's probably the case it applies to us too. But here's the caveat. And there's multiple caveats. In mice, an extension, say, of 10% is equal to a much, much smaller extension in humans. And the larger extension in mice is from calorie restriction, and the smaller extension is from protein restriction. So if you keep your calories low as a human, you're going to get the bulk of the effect. If you add protein restriction to that, you're not going to get much more. And the effects are, say, 10-20% in mice for calorie restriction and like 5-10% in mice for protein restriction. Humans can be like 1% or less. Okay, it's a tiny effect. It's a small effect. It does exist. It will exist. But it's not a big effect if it does exist. The other caveat is body composition, frailty, and function in older age. If you decide to go a protein-restricted route, which I have not decided to do, because I enjoy vigor, I enjoy athleticism, I enjoy size, I've chosen not to go in that direction. But if you choose to go in that direction, frailty later in life becomes an issue. It becomes an issue for all adults, all elderly, but for protein-restricted people in particular. And this was shown in a randomized controlled trial that I'll probably have to discuss in another video as well for you guys. Maybe we'll do these 2 protein videos back to back right after this one. That's what we'll do. In this trial, it was shown that supplementing well above the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, the recommended intake, I think they were at like 0.83 or 0.87 grams per kilogram, well above that, produced a really dramatic benefit to lean body tissue in these elderly adults and reduce the risk of falling in a really rigorous randomized controlled trial. I fought with Garth Davis about this. I don't want to talk about that too much. But this trial is a really good trial, and it's an indication that older people could really benefit from increased protein. Why? Because when you're in a calorie deficit, additional protein in the diet is most important and probably almost only important. I won't say only important, but close to only important. When you're in a calorie deficit, you're losing weight, or you're training to gain muscle. And definitely when you're doing both. Additional protein is most important in those instances, and here's the deal. In elderly people, they're in a chronic calorie deficit. For some people, it starts earlier than others, but all of them over time lose weight. The growth curve for humans, the growth curve for rats, mice, every mammalian species is such that you start at 0 kilograms, 0 grams, you go up, you hit midlife. I don't know, for humans it might be 60 years, 50, 60, 70 years, I'm not exactly sure where. It's around 60 years, I think, in humans, 65 years. And you start to decline in your weight. When you start to decline, that's when you need more protein. That will preserve your muscle mass as you decline in weight in your older years. And one way you can do that is through supplemental dairy, like milk. It's very simple. If there's a high protein plant milk, that would be great as well, but I don't know of anything like that. But if there is, do that. And let's come out with something like that where we can help people who are plant-based to do it. Okay, so yeah, that is my short lecture on protein. If you want to get jacked, eat protein. If you want to minimize your fat gain, eat protein. If you want to minimize your fat in general, eat protein. If you want to maximize your lifespan marginally, eat less protein. If you want to maintain your functionality in older age, eat protein more after about the age of 65. And before that point, if you want to eat less protein, you should also be weight training to maintain your body composition so you have a big, tall mountain to go down from when you hit 65. You don't want to start off from a small hill because there's not far to go down. So you need to be eating you need to be training well and keeping a lot of muscle mass throughout life until you hit 65. It's going to maximize your ability to tolerate losses in body weight that is inevitably going to happen during your elderly years. That is the lesson on protein and physical functioning right there. That is my philosophy. I don't restrict protein at all. I like protein. I want to be big. I'll take the year off that I might lose. Love being big. It's great. Kick ass in jiu-jitsu. That's like my thing. I love it. I love knowing, I love the safety of being big and knowing like I can handle any situation physically, anything. I love that. That security. I don't want to be in a situation where I cannot. It's important to me. Okay, so so those are your different pathways with respect to protein. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I mean, I've covered a lot here about why I eat the way that I do, why I have the orientation that I do. Well, the last thing is the premier protein. It's a milk protein. I don't usually eat dairy, but we don't have a good tasting plant protein drink that's cheap. All these like pea protein drinks, they taste like crap. They're horrible. So what we need is a plant protein drink that's like premier protein, that like I want to just like drink like liquid ice cream. That's what I need, and if I had that, I would take that instead, but we don't. We have these terrible tasting plant proteins, and that needs to change. So that's something I would like to work on soonish, once I get my feet on the ground, the foundations, then that's something I'm gonna work on. If we don't have a project like that, I'm gonna do it. Okay, so that's the video. Yeah, hopefully that helps you. If you have any questions about this, send them to me. Send them to me on YouTube, right? And given that you have listened to the end of the video and you're gonna ask these questions, I know that you are serious about the video, so send those questions to me on YouTube. Maybe I should make a code, like, so that I know you got to the end of the video. Just ask me questions, ask me additional questions, and then say, start it by saying Kevin. So Kevin, comma, and everybody says Kevin, comma, I know either they watched to the end or they accidentally said Kevin, comma, but just say Kevin, comma, and I'll respond to every one of those questions about what you should eat. And yeah, this is my philosophy. This is my philosophy about what you should eat and how you can be healthfully jacked. And this is the orientation that I would have. But I do want to actually talk about one other thing that is important: supplementation. I supplement mainly with creatine. I supplement, and I'm gonna have a whole episode on that with an expert, a world's expert on creatine, with a focus on brain health in particular, because everybody knows the effects for sports performance. We'll talk about that part a little bit in our discussion on creatine, but I'm gonna have an interview where we talk about mainly the cognitive effects and talk about the evidence for that. I supplement with B vitamins for the same reason I talked about in the homocysteine video. What else? I supplement with vitamin D. I need to make a vitamin D video. We'll talk about the risks and the benefits. There may be a cancer benefit. I need to make a whole video about that. I supplement with rosuvastatin and with ezetimibe, which lowers LDL cholesterol and is going to have probably or close to half, like 40 to 50% reduction in my relative risk of cardiovascular disease as I get older, which is going to pay dividends in the long term. I might also add cocoa flavanols soon, because those are good for brain function. And we're going to have a video about that as well. So there's like 10 videos I've talked about here. Cool. So yeah, that's what I do. And yeah, that's great. I hope you liked the video. If you did, subscribe and click the like button. It's obligatory. If you like the video, click the like button. Please, my sirs. Click the like button. And my ma'ams, my ladies as well. I know that like, it changes, but like I think on YouTube it's like maybe like 90% male, So the 10% of you chicks out there, you're not chicks, you're girls. No, you're not girls, you're women. 10% of you women out there, some fine, some excellent, not fine, some excellent and upstanding ladies. Thank you for listening because, I mean, it's great that we, I think we're gonna get more over time, more women, because I think I'm being a little bit more like neutral. I think a lot of my male followers have liked the sort of like Kevin who really goes hard, but that's not what I'm doing anymore as much. I mean, I'm still doing it, but I'm doing it in a different way, right? But yeah, so of all you ladies and gentlemen, please click the like button and subscribe. That would be super awesome. Also, check out the podcast at The Kevin Bass Show on all your local and favorite local podcast directory. The Kevin Bass Show. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts because there's one guy who has like a 3-star podcast review for this show, and it's 3 stars, and he's like, Kevin can do a better job at being more systematic. Bros, I'm not trying to be necessarily systematic. Sometimes I'm just trying to create a corrective to the misinformation out there by giving the opposite side of the story. So like, if everybody says sauna's the best in the world, I'll say no. Sauna doesn't necessarily have these benefits and probably doesn't. And plus, sauna can fry your balls and make it so you're infertile or you're less fertile. And there's some evidence that sauna, like heat shock proteins are actually impair longevity, stuff like that. And I'm not trying to give a comprehensive view. I will give a comprehensive view eventually, but that's not what I'm trying to do right now. Hope that makes sense, friends, because, you know, that 1-star review is. So please leave a review to overlap that and like push that out of the screen, because when you scroll down to the bottom, you look at the reviews, that's our first review that comes up. Somebody please help me to replace that. Somebody can do it with a 1-star review, but then I'm just gonna like keep asking until somebody gets a 5-star review there. So get a 5-star review there, please. And because it's a BS review, it's like I don't even care that much, but it's like not true. Like if it's somebody saying like Kevin's the worst in the world, I'd still want it to be replaced, but like this one's especially like silly. And then check out iTunes, check out TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Kevin N. Basket, EVINNBASS. Check out Patreon to help me pay my bills and get out of the basement in which I live. I don't live here. I make videos here, but you know, it would be nice to get a studio someday, which I will have. But the sooner the better, so if you can pay for this in Patreon and help me out, that'd be great. Other things are, leave feedback, comments, stuff. Tell me what I can do better. Tell me what I'm not doing as well. I know some people are speeding up the videos because I'm speaking so slowly, but honestly, ask yourself this cadence that I have right now, it's kind of like, it kind of, I don't know how to say, I think people like it. I like listening to it. It's very like, it's more grabbing. Whereas if I'm talking a million miles an hour and stuttering, it's a little more like hard to listen to. But I believe that the way that I'm talking to you now is a little bit better. And so that's the way I'm gonna talk from now on. If people are really upset about that, then just like, but I like it, I prefer it. Like, I prefer it. So I don't really care. I don't care what you think. You can speed it up if it doesn't work for you. Okay, but, yeah, but do leave feedback. And like, if you really hate it, like, let me know. You know, really hate it, let me know. But I've gotten only good comments on it so far. Give me good comments and give me criticisms too. I really do need criticisms. You know, I do need people to help me keep going, because while I'm learning a ton of stuff, I want to keep hearing things so I can keep learning and keep learning how to present and keep learning how to let you guys get the good information, which I provided a lot here, didn't I? This is nutty. It's like, there's like 20 videos worth of information here. I could extend them out and talk about all these different subjects, right? So donate to me, because I'm like the best on the internet. I don't think there's anybody, I mean, okay, my circle of friends are also the best, for sure. Like, they're the best in their own way, and they're like equally as good, or like they're good at other things that are also really good that maybe I'm not good at, like, for sure. Like, but I'm in the upper tier. I'm at the top. I'm at the elite level. So give me money. Give me money. I need some money because it's helpful. It really makes a big difference. It makes a massive difference for me. And if you think I'm as good as I think I am, and you think I'm providing that kind of value, you know, please help out. Cool. Yes, hit subscribe, hit like, don't forget, and check you out with the next video. Peace out.